I met Laura on a rainy Tuesday in early spring, the kind of gray day where the city feels slower and everything smells like wet concrete. I had just started my new job downtown, and she was working the front desk of the same building. She had this calm energy about her, like the storm outside couldn't touch her. She was sipping a coffee, scrolling through her phone, and I remember how her smile felt completely out of place in that kind of weather. Warm. Real. Our first conversation wasn't anything special. I asked if there was a vending machine on the floor. She pointed me toward it without looking up, then paused and said, "Try the one on 5 better options, and it doesn't steal your change." That stuck with me. I made it a point to say hi after that. Nothing too forward. Just small talk. Weather. Work. Coffee preferences. It took about 3 weeks of hallway banter before I asked her to lunch, and to my surprise, she said yes. That first lunch turned into more. A few dinners, late-night walks through the park, and suddenly we were spending weekends together like it had always been that way. I found out she was into photography and ran a tiny side business selling prints online. I loved watching her work, how focused she got when she was editing pictures or lining up a shot. She said I brought her back down to earth when she got too in her head. We balanced each other. I proposed on a beach in Maine a year and a half later. She said yes before I even finished asking. We got married the following summer in a backyard ceremony at her parents' house. It was small, close friends, family, string lights, and a barbecue. It was us. No big production. Just genuine happiness and a lot of hugs. Now, 12 years in, our life is comfortable. We live in a quiet neighborhood about 30 minutes outside the city. 2 bedrooms, a little back deck, one very spoiled golden retriever named Milo who thinks the couch is his throne. I'm a project manager for a mid-sized marketing firm, and Laura runs her own business selling handmade jewelry and accessories online. She set up a studio space in the spare room and spends her mornings there, usually with a podcast playing in the background and Milo curled up at her feet. We eat dinner together almost every night unless I have a late call. Sunday mornings are for pancakes and bad movies. She drinks her coffee black. I take mine with cream and way too much sugar. She teases me for it constantly. Our friends joke that we're the most settled couple in the group, the reliable ones who never cancel plans and always bring the good snacks to game night. It's not flashy, but it's solid. Familiar. Ours. And for the longest time, I thought that was enough. If you were to ask me what a typical day in our life looks like, I could probably walk you through it in my sleep. Laura wakes up before me, always. I don't even need an alarm anymore. I can hear the soft creak of her getting out of bed, the faint shuffle of her slippers as she heads for the kitchen. She's got this morning ritual that she treats like religion. Pour over coffee, a couple slices of toast, and a few minutes watching the backyard through the kitchen window. She says it helps her stay grounded. I just say she likes watching squirrels fight over the bird feeder. By the time I roll out of bed, she's usually halfway through answering emails or prepping shipments for her store. Her little jewelry business, something that started out as a hobby, really took off during the pandemic. She works with a few independent suppliers, designs her own pieces, and ships them out all over the country. Some days, she gets more orders than she can handle, and I'll help her pack boxes after dinner. I work in the city 4 days a week. The commute's not bad, about 40 minutes on the train. My job's nothing glamorous, but it's solid. I manage a team that handles advertising projects for small to mid-sized brands. Product launches, brand strategy, things like that. My boss, Alan, runs the division. We've worked together for 5 years, and I'd like to think he respects me. I've pulled long hours for him, taken the lead on major clients, that kind of thing. We're not friends exactly, but we've shared drinks at enough work events to have a kind of comfortable rhythm. Laura and I make time for each other, even when things get busy. Friday nights are usually takeout and a movie. Saturdays we try to get out of the house. Sometimes it's just errands and coffee. Other times we'll drive out to the trails and take Milo for a long walk. She always insists on bringing her camera, just in case she sees something worth framing. Our fridge is covered in candid snapshots she's taken over the years. One of me laughing at something she said. One of Milo asleep with his head in her lap. One from a picnic in the spring where I'm holding a sandwich like it's a trophy. I never really stopped to think about how lucky I was. Not in a boastful way, just in that quiet, content kind of way where you assume life will keep going the way it's been going. We weren't flashy, but we were steady. Solid. I didn't doubt her. Never had a reason to. People talk about the one, like it's something you feel all at once. For me, it was slow. A growing comfort. The kind where you come home, And even the way she says your name makes your shoulders drop and your breath come easier. I used to think that kind of love was unshakable, the kind that lasts. One of the things I always loved most about our life together was how much it felt like a team effort, not in some big, dramatic way, but in the little things. Like how we split the chores without ever really assigning them. I cooked, she cleaned. She did laundry, I took care of the yard. If one of us was swamped, the other picked up the slack. It was never something we talked about. It just worked. We both had our own worlds, but we stayed connected. Her world was full of color and texture. She'd lose hours designing bracelets or photographing her pieces in natural light. Sometimes I'd find her lying on the floor with little trays of beads scattered around her like a kid with Legos. My world was full of spreadsheets, timelines, and emails with way too many bullet points. But at the end of the day, we always met in the middle, usually over dinner. Laura's not much of a cook, and she'd be the first to admit that. But she'd always offer to set the table or make the salad, and sometimes she'd sneak a glass of wine before dinner and dance around the kitchen with Milo while I stirred the pot. Those are the things I miss the most now. The ordinary moments that felt like home. Our social life was pretty simple. We'd meet up with friends once or twice a month, host the occasional game night, visit her parents for Sunday lunch when we could. My folks live out of state, so most of our family moments came from her side. Her mom is this high-energy, opinionated woman who always gave me a hard time about stealing her daughter, but she loved me. Her dad was quieter, more like me, the kind of guy who let everyone else talk and just kept an eye on the grill. Vacations were mostly low-key. We weren't big on international travel. We liked cabins in the woods, beaches in the off-season, a week here or there to reset. Our last trip was to Asheville, rented a little cottage tucked in the hills, spent the mornings sipping coffee on the porch and the afternoons hiking trails with Milo. Laura kept saying we needed to frame the sunset photos she took from the porch. We never did, but they're still on her camera roll. I think one of the reasons I never questioned anything was because nothing really changed. Our routine stayed the same. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still curled up beside me on the couch at night, still called me babe when she asked me to grab something from the store. I didn't realize how much I clung to those patterns, how much I took them as proof that everything was still fine. But that's the thing about routines. They can hide a lot. They make you believe in the illusion of stability, right up until the moment everything falls apart. It started with something so normal, so completely harmless sounding, that I didn't think twice about it. We were cleaning up after dinner one night. She was stacking dishes in the washer. I was wiping down the counter, when Laura casually said, "Hey, I've been meaning to ask, do you mind if I go on a trip with the girls next month?" I didn't even look up. A trip? Where to? She dried her hands, leaned against the counter with that relaxed little half-smile she always does when she's gauging my reaction. Tulum. Just for a week. The usual crew, Alyssa, Kat, Becca. You know, beach, cocktails, bad decisions. I laughed. Sounds dangerous. She rolled her eyes. Please. The wildest thing we'll do is overpay for drinks and forget to reapply sunscreen. There was nothing about the conversation that felt off. If anything, I was happy she was making time for herself. She hadn't taken a real break in a while, and running her own business had her burning the candle at both ends lately. I told her to go for it. I even pulled some money from our joint account so she wouldn't have to worry about flights or the hotel. Use it for the spa, I said. Go full luxury mode. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "God, you're such a catch." And I believed her. Over the next couple weeks, she dropped little updates about the trip here and there. We're staying at an all-inclusive. Kat wants to book an ATV tour. I need a new swimsuit. All stuff I'd expect. Nothing raised a red flag. She even showed me the group chat with the girls, asking if one of the photos made her look too mommish. It didn't. The night before she left, I helped her zip up her suitcase. Milo kept jumping on the bed like he knew someone was going away. Laura laughed, said she'd miss us, and promised to FaceTime from the beach. I kissed her goodbye the next morning, carried her bag to the Uber, waved from the porch like the supportive husband I've always tried to be. And that was it. Off she went. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed in a million years, was that she wasn't meeting Alyssa, Kat, or Becca at the airport. She was meeting Alan, my boss. I didn't find that out until much later. At the time, I had no reason not to believe her. No reason to doubt that she was sipping cocktails under palm trees with her girlfriends, wearing big sunglasses and complaining about sand in her sandals. But somewhere over the clouds, while I was at my desk going through client briefs and checking my inbox, my wife and my boss were heading into a completely different kind of getaway, one that I unknowingly paid for. Looking back, I can't believe how easily the lie slid into place. At first, it was nothing I could really put my finger on. Laura had been gone for 3 days, and everything on the surface looked fine. She texted like she normally would, pictures of the beach, photos of fruity drinks, a short video of her and Kat doing a cheers with matching sunglasses and floppy hats. I remember watching that video twice, smiling at first, then freezing the frame. It was Kat on the left. I recognized her voice, but I couldn't make out who was holding the camera. That's when the first pinprick of doubt hit me. I didn't say anything, of course. Why would I? It was just a weird angle. A friend could have taken the video. A stranger. Whatever. I pushed it down and went back to work. But once that thought took root, everything else started to feel off. I called her that night just to hear her voice, not because I didn't trust her, but because I missed her. She answered, sounded tired, said they were getting ready to go out. I asked where to. She paused for a second too long before saying, that seafood place Becca found. You know, the one I told you about. Except she hadn't. Not once. I checked the texts. Nothing about seafood. Nothing about Becca. Just a few generic pictures and a caption that said, Paradise. Wish you were here. I'm not a jealous guy. Never have been. But I'm observant, always have been. And the more I sat with it, the more these small, subtle mismatches started to add up. On day 4, she didn't respond to my good morning text until almost 2 p.m. Said she slept in after a night of drinking. I joked that she must have needed it. She didn't respond. Later that evening, she finally replied with a heart emoji and a picture of her toes in the sand. But I noticed something strange. The timestamp on the photo didn't match the lighting. The sun looked like it was setting, not mid-afternoon. I brushed it off. I told myself I was being ridiculous. She was probably using an old photo. Who cares? People post stuff out of order all the time. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the trip, about how casually she'd brought it up, about how fast she'd packed, about how she hadn't mentioned Becca or Kat by name in the last 2 days. It was always we or the girls. On a whim, I checked Kat's Instagram. It was private. Same with Alyssa's. I hadn't thought much about it before. I wasn't close with any of them, but it suddenly felt intentional, like I was looking at a house with all the windows blacked out. That's when I started to feel the shift, the moment where love stops being blind and starts squinting. It wasn't full-blown suspicion. Not yet. But something inside me had started ticking. Quiet, steady, and impossible to ignore. Something wasn't right. By the 5th day of Laura's trip, I'd stopped pretending everything felt normal. I was still going through the motions, work, walk the dog, clean up around the house. But there was a weird, static energy buzzing beneath the surface of everything. The kind of feeling you get when a storm's about to hit and no one else seems to notice the wind shifting. She hadn't FaceTimed me once since she left. That alone wouldn't have triggered anything before. We both like our space. But when I brought it up in a text, she brushed it off like it was nothing. Wi-Fi is garbage here. Everyone's trying to stream. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. No call. No apology. Just another photo of her legs stretched out on a lounge chair, cocktail in hand, blue water in the background. No people. No voices. Just her, alone in paradise. And I realized something. I hadn't heard any of her friends' voices since the day she left. Not once. That night I did something I'm not proud of. I opened her iPad. She left it at home, and it was synced to her messages. I told myself I wasn't looking to spy. I just needed peace of mind. Some confirmation that this was all in my head. That I wasn't losing it. But there was nothing there. No group chat. No messages from Kat, Alyssa, Becca, no one. Just old threads from months ago. Nothing recent. I kept scrolling, but it was like someone had vacuumed out the last 2 weeks of her digital life. She's not stupid. If she wanted to hide something, she'd know how to do it. That scared me more than anything. At work the next day, I couldn't focus. My mind was spinning with every unanswered question, every minor inconsistency. I snapped at a colleague during a meeting, then spent the next hour apologizing and pretending I was just tired. Later that afternoon, I bumped into Alan in the elevator. He was unusually chipper, grinning, almost like a guy who just won a bet. He was wearing a different watch than he usually does, something sporty and out of character for him. I made a dumb joke about roughing it without me while I covered his accounts for the week, and he just laughed and said, "Sometimes you just gotta unplug, right?" I didn't think anything of it at the time. But later, sitting in traffic, his words started echoing. Unplug. It didn't make sense. Alan hadn't taken any time off. He was supposed to be in the office. His schedule hadn't changed. Had it? I texted Laura that night, asked how the trip was going. She sent me a photo of a dinner plate, ceviche, guac, margarita. Fancy, clean, like something you'd see in a travel ad. And something in me broke a little. Because I couldn't stop picturing her at that table, with someone who wasn't Kat or Becca or Alyssa. I still didn't have proof. Nothing concrete. But I had a feeling. The kind that crawls under your skin and sits heavy in your gut. I wanted to believe I was wrong. But I'd stopped feeling sure. It was the Saturday before she was supposed to come home. I remember that clearly because I had this brief moment in the morning where I told myself to stop spiraling. I made pancakes, took Milo on a long walk, opened a few windows to air the place out. For about an hour, I let myself believe that maybe I just overthought everything. Maybe the little inconsistencies were just that noise. Coincidences. I even started tidying up the living room, thinking it would be nice for her to come home to a clean space. I was trying in some small way to stitch the trust back together. Around noon, I decided to run a couple errands. I needed to get some groceries, pick up a package, and truthfully, I just needed to get out of my own head. I drove by the strip of cafes Laura used to meet her friends at and figured I'd grab a coffee. What happened next hit me so hard it almost didn't register as real at first. As I was walking back to my car, I heard someone call my name, hesitant, almost guilty. I turned around, and there was Becca, one of the girls. One of the friends Laura was supposedly with in Tulum. Becca looked like she'd just seen a ghost. She tried to smile, but it came off stiff, like her mouth didn't want to cooperate with whatever her brain was trying to sell. I greeted her casually, trying to pretend I wasn't already on edge, and asked how she was doing. That's when she hesitated. She glanced down at the iced coffee in her hand, then back up at me, clearly wrestling with something. I thought you guys were out of town, she said slowly. I figured you were with her. I blinked. With who? Laura, she said, then quickly added, wait, she didn't tell you? I just stared at her, not breathing. Tell me what? Becca's face went pale. She looked around, like maybe she was hoping someone else could swoop in and save her. Then she sighed, ran a hand through her hair, and said the words that hit like a sledgehammer. She didn't go to Tulum with us. None of us did. She canceled the whole thing last minute. Said she had something else come up. I assumed it was a trip with you. But she definitely wasn't with us. The air drained out of my lungs. I couldn't even respond right away. I just stood there in the middle of the parking lot like someone had yanked the floor out from under me. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. All I could see was every photo she'd sent me. Every fake smile. Every text about cocktails and spa days. A vacation that didn't exist. Becca must have seen the shift in my face, because she took a step back and said, softer this time, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew. I nodded, barely, thanked her, numbly, and walked back to my car in a daze. I sat in the driver's seat for a full 10 minutes, keys in the ignition, just staring at the dashboard. My hands were shaking, not from rage, from disbelief, shock, the kind that wraps around your brain like fog and makes everything feel detached from reality. When I finally got home, I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a drink in the middle of the day. I don't usually drink alone, and never before 5 p.m., but I needed something to settle the chaos building inside me. I sat on the couch, glass in hand, and replayed every moment of the last week in my head. The text delays, the vague captions, the absence of her friends, Alan's sudden cheerfulness, the way he said, unplug. And then it hit me. Like a final, cruel punchline to an already devastating joke. Alan had been out of the office all week. Not officially. Not on the calendar. But he hadn't been in any meetings. He hadn't replied to emails until late at night. He looked sunburnt in the elevator, now that I thought about it. Wore a new watch, something you'd pick up from a duty-free shop. He'd said something about catching up when I saw him, but now I realized it had been a cover. A bluff. They were together. My wife and my boss. On the trip I paid for. While I was here walking the dog and working overtime to cover his accounts. It all made sense. In the worst possible way. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dark with my dog curled up next to me, staring at nothing, letting the weight of it crush me one breath at a time. Because now I knew. She walked through the door like nothing had happened. It was early evening when Laura got back. Suitcase rolling behind her, sunglasses perched on her head, skin-kissed by the kind of sun you don't get at home in late spring. She looked relaxed, radiant, even, like a woman returning from paradise. She smiled at me as she closed the door and said, "Hey, babe. I missed you." There was a pause. I didn't respond. I was sitting on the couch, Milo at my feet, hands clasped together so tightly I think my knuckles had gone pale. I didn't say a word at first, just looked at her, really looked, and in that moment, I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She wasn't my wife. Not the one I'd build a life with. Not the one I used to dream about growing old beside. No, this was someone else. Someone who looked me in the eye, kissed me goodbye, and then boarded a flight with the man who signs my paychecks. She blinked, her smile faltering just a bit. "Everything okay?" I finally spoke, calm and measured in a way that surprised even me. "I know where you were." She froze, eyes searching my face like she didn't quite hear me right. "What do you mean?" "You weren't in Tulum with your friends," I said. "Becca saw me yesterday. Said you canceled the trip." "I know, Laura. I know everything." For a moment, the silence was so thick you could feel it pressing against the walls. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. And then, God help me, she actually tried to laugh. "Are you serious right now?" "I am," I said, still steady. "Just like you were when you kissed me goodbye and flew off with Alan." That shut her up. Her face changed instantly, not into guilt, not into shame, but into something colder. Defensive. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "You were never supposed to find out like this," she muttered. I stood up then, slowly. "What exactly was your plan, Laura? Come home, play house, pretend nothing happened? Keep lying to my face? How long has it been going on?" She shrugged, like she was already past the point of caring whether I hurt or not. "It doesn't matter now. You could at least have the decency." "Decency?" she snapped. "Are you really going to lecture me about decency? You think I haven't felt like a prisoner in this marriage for the last 2 years? You think working late and sending dog memes counts as love?" Her voice was sharp now, cutting through the air like glass. "Alan sees me. He actually listens. He makes me feel something. You're just boring. You play husband like it's a job. And I'm tired of pretending you're enough." She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She just stood there, throwing the worst version of herself at me, like she'd been waiting for this explosion. Like she wanted it. I didn't yell back. I didn't break anything. I simply said, "Then go be with him." She flinched, but not out of remorse. It was the surprise of losing control. I turned my back to her and walked to the hall closet. Pulled out the bag she'd brought on the trip, the one she lied about. I tossed it toward the front door. "You can take your things and go. Call him. Move in with him. You're not my problem anymore." And she did. Just like that. She slammed the bedroom door, packed a few more clothes, grabbed her charger, and walked out without looking back. No final words. No goodbye. Just silence and the sound of her car starting in the driveway. The next day, I went to work. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. But I walked into that office building like a ghost in a suit and tie. I said hello to the front desk, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and sat through the morning meeting like nothing had happened. Alan didn't even flinch when he saw me. In fact, he had the audacity to smile. Pull me aside. Said something vague about hoping we could talk soon. That's when I cut him off. "You don't need to worry about talking," I said. "But you might want to call your lawyer." He tilted his head. "Excuse me. You're being reported for tax fraud." "I've already submitted everything." His face drained of color. Because what Alan didn't know was that I'd spent the last 12 hours gathering every internal report I could access, numbers he doctored, money he shuffled around to avoid reporting bonuses, off-the-books payments he thought no one noticed. I packaged it all, every spreadsheet, every discrepancy, and handed it over to the IRS and our parent company's compliance team. Then I handed in my key card. He didn't say a word. Couldn't. I walked out without looking back, just like she had the night before. But I wasn't done. Over the next few days, I told her family everything. Her sister, her mother, her cousins, all of them. I laid it out plain. No dramatics. Just the truth. The affair. The deception. The man she left me for. They were horrified. Embarrassed. Furious. And just like that, the family she thought would cushion her fall turned their backs. She had burned every bridge, and I made sure the world saw the smoke. The silence after betrayal is a strange kind of loud. It's not peaceful. It's not quiet in the way you'd hope. It buzzes, hums, echoes. I'd wake up in the morning and forget, for about 3 seconds, that she was gone, that everything had unraveled. I'd still reach for the side of the bed she used to sleep on, half expecting to hear her in the kitchen, humming while the coffee brewed. But there was nothing. Just the faint sound of the fridge humming and Milo's tail thumping once when he saw me stir. The days started blending. I kept the TV off most of the time. Couldn't stand background noise that wasn't her voice. Couldn't look at the photos on the fridge, so I took them all down in one quiet sweep. Not with anger. Just with this numb sense of practicality, like I was tidying up after a storm that ripped through the house and left debris that no longer meant anything. Her laughter in those photos felt like it belonged to a stranger. Her handwriting on the notes stuck to the corkboard made my stomach twist. I left one note up, just one, the shopping list she wrote the day before she left for her trip. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see the handwriting of the woman I used to know, just to remind myself she was real once. The fallout at work happened faster than I thought it would. Alan was suspended pending an investigation the day after I submitted the reports. 2 days later, word got around the office. Someone forwarded me an email from corporate confirming his termination, effective immediately. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't want to be. I didn't want congratulations or pats on the back. I didn't want to be the guy who exposed the affair, or the fraud, or the downfall of the division. I just wanted to be a man who took back something that was stolen, even if it was only a sense of control. As for Laura, she tried to reach out. Of course she did. First through texts, then emails, then a long, rambling voicemail where she claimed Alan had pressured her into the whole thing, that it wasn't what it looked like, that it just happened, and she was in a bad place. I didn't respond. I didn't delete her messages either. I let them sit there, unopened, like little reminders that the woman I loved no longer existed, and the one sending me these desperate digital apologies was someone I didn't owe a single breath to. Her family was another story. Her sister called to apologize for not seeing the signs. Her mother sent me a handwritten letter, a real one. Said I was always the best thing that happened to Laura, and that what she did was shameful beyond words. I believed her. I think they truly were blindsided. But I didn't have the energy to comfort them through their grief over her betrayal. I had my own grief to sit with, and it was heavier than I expected. Betrayal is not just about losing someone. It's about losing the version of them you built your life around, the version that never really existed. It took a while to realize I didn't actually miss Laura. I missed the routine. I missed the idea of her, the comfort, the assumed safety. But when I really let myself dig beneath that, when I let myself feel without trying to edit it, I saw how much I had already been living in a half-empty house long before she packed her bags. She'd been distant for a while, emotionally checked out, and maybe I'd noticed in ways I didn't want to admit. Maybe the affair wasn't the moment she left me. Maybe it was just the moment I caught up. I started making little changes. I joined a new gym, got a different haircut, shorter than I'd ever worn it, bought new sheets, tossed the mugs we used to use for Saturday morning coffee, started sitting on her side of the couch. They were small acts, but they mattered. They were the early steps toward remembering who I was before I became Laura's husband, before I let my identity shrink to fit a relationship that had already outgrown me. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I stood in front of the mirror and didn't see a man who'd been left behind. I saw someone crawling his way out of the rubble. It's strange how life keeps moving even when you feel like yours has stopped. I remember standing in line at the grocery store maybe a month after Laura left, just watching people talk, laugh, check their phones like the world hadn't cracked in half. It's jarring, being that invisible. Like you're walking through a movie set while everything inside you is still smoldering. But eventually, something shifts. The smoke clears a little. The silence starts feeling less like an echo chamber and more like a clean slate. I didn't set out to meet anyone new. That wasn't the plan. If anything, I was prepared to be alone for a while. I thought I needed solitude to fix the damage, to figure out who I was now. And maybe that was true. But sometimes healing doesn't just come from introspection. Sometimes it comes when someone reminds you what light feels like again. Her name was Claire. We met at the dog park, of all places. Milo ran straight into her golden doodle like a freight train, knocked them both over, and before I could apologize, she was already laughing. I mean genuinely laughing. Eyes closed, head back. The kind of laugh that comes from a place people don't fake. We started talking. First about the dogs, then about books, then about places we'd both traveled. I didn't even notice the time until it was nearly dark and Milo was practically begging to go home. She gave me her number. I waited a week to text. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was terrified of ruining something good by rushing into it. That was the thing with Claire. From the very beginning, everything about her felt calm. No pressure. No games. Just presence. When I told her about the divorce, I kept it brief, expecting the conversation to get awkward. It didn't. She just nodded, said, "That sounds like a lot," and let me talk as much or as little as I needed. We started seeing each other more, walks in the evening, coffee on weekends, the occasional dinner that turned into 3-hour conversations. It was slow, but deliberate. I didn't want to rebound, and Claire wasn't offering herself as one. She had her own past, her own cracks and healed-over scars. There was something deeply reassuring about that, knowing I wasn't the only one carrying ghosts, but also knowing neither of us was dragging them into the room. One night, we were sitting on a bench by the lake. She was telling me about her father, how he used to take her fishing early in the mornings, and how she missed that silence. Not the act of fishing, just the stillness of it. I looked at her then, the way she tucked her knees up on the bench, the way she rubbed the back of her neck when she got self-conscious, and I realized something that scared me in the best possible way. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to feel again. It wasn't some movie moment. I didn't hear violins. There were still pieces of me I hadn't picked up off the floor yet. But I wasn't looking backward anymore. I wasn't thinking about Laura, or Alan, or what should have been. I was here, with someone real, someone who looked at me like I was more than a man recovering from wreckage. We kissed that night. It wasn't passionate or wild. It was quiet. Kind. Like an agreement between two people who'd been through enough to know not to waste time pretending. I still have bad days. I still dream about the house the way it used to feel before it became a graveyard. I still think about the version of Laura I used to love, and sometimes that hurts more than the betrayal itself. But now, when I wake up in the morning, it's not with dread. It's with purpose. I take Milo out. I cook breakfast again. I even started painting, nothing serious, just landscapes, but it feels good to make something. To create instead of just clean up after destruction. Claire hasn't met my family yet. I'm not in a rush. What we have is still growing, and I want to let it grow on its own terms. But there's something steady in her presence, something grounding. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm chasing closure. I feel like I'm building a new life. People talk a lot about closure, like it's a moment you arrive at. A door that swings shut with a satisfying click, a full stop at the end of a sentence. But I've come to believe closure isn't an event. It's a choice. A quiet one, made over and over again until the pain stops being the loudest thing in the room. It's been nearly a year since Laura walked out of our home and into Alan's arms. Or what was left of his life, anyway. I heard through someone at my old company that the IRS audit snowballed. They uncovered a mess years in the making. Fines. Asset freezes. And eventually, criminal charges. The man who used to smirk at me across a conference room table is now unemployed, under investigation, and from what I gather, abandoned by the same woman he threw everything away for. Laura reached out once more, about 3 months ago. An email. Long, emotional, full of half remorse and regret-wrapped rationalizations. She said she didn't expect forgiveness. That she missed Milo. That she'd made some really bad choices. But it didn't move me. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just distance. I didn't reply. I've moved out of the house. It was never going to feel like mine again, not after what happened inside those walls. I rented it for a while, then sold it and used the money to start fresh in a small place near the lake. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I picked out every piece of furniture. I chose the colors. I hung my own photos. Not couple pictures. Not memories of what was, just scenes that bring me calm. Mountains. Still water. Open sky. Claire is still here. We're taking it slow, and I'm glad. There's a depth to her, not the dramatic kind, but the type you don't realize you've fallen into until one day you're sitting next to her, sipping coffee, and you realize you haven't thought about your ex in hours. That's the kind of healing she brings. Subtle. Real. I've gone back to therapy, something I'd never done before all of this. I used to think it was only for people in crisis. But it's taught me how to listen to my own mind. How to stop bulldozing over emotions in the name of being fine. I'm learning to grieve things I used to suppress. The marriage. The man I used to be. Even the version of Laura I believed in. And strangely, I'm grateful. Not for the betrayal, I'll never be glad it happened, but for what it cracked open in me. For what it forced me to face. For how it made me look at my life not as something to endure, but something I could shape. I've got more clarity now than I ever did in that comfortable, quiet marriage I thought was solid. People sometimes ask, if I could go back, would I have done anything differently? And the truth is, no. Because the man I was back then needed to be broken open to become the man I am now. To anyone reading this who's still in the thick of it, still checking phones, still analyzing texts, still waiting for the other shoe to drop, I'll say this: trust your gut. And when the truth comes, as it always does, don't waste too much time wondering why someone hurt you. Most of the time, their betrayal says far more about them than it ever will about you. What matters is what you do next, what you choose to carry forward, and what you leave behind. Me? I'm choosing peace.